Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Keep It Dirty, a podcast where my guests share their life living functionally and sustainably and the why behind their experiences navigating through our ever changing environment. And I am your host, Leslie Dowling. I'm a corporate speaker sharing how one can jumpstart your path to increase revenue and productivity through restorative health techniques. And today it is a pleasure to welcome my guest, Kirk Patrick Miller. He is an author, a speaker, a radio personality, mental health coach, educational consultant, violinist, inventor, and painter. Well, it's such an honor to have you, Kirk, and thank you. I know we've been waiting so long to have you on my podcast. How are you?
I'm doing really well. It's very good to be here. Nutrition and what your show is about is so important, and especially when you talk about mental health. So my story really centers around mental health, and we know now there is a huge connection between our gut and our brain, and so as science is evolving, you're seeing more of a, I think, circle backwards towards some things that we should have been doing in the past, which is kind of back to more natural options. And for me, my personal journey kind of started earlier on. I didn't have a diagnosis when I was earlier or very young. So ADHD was the diagnosis, and they were a little worried about depression and anxiety. Those things kind of all exploded in my early 20s, and that was when I was diagnosed with bipolar 1, OCD, generalized anxiety, and then ADHD was still in that fold as well. So it's it took me a long time to like go through all of the different medical processes that you go through. So they start with pretty heavy medications when you get a big diagnosis, and so when people are beginning their journey of mental health, and if they're not a neurotypical individual, which is the word we kind of use for somebody who doesn't have a specific diagnosis, they fit into just the general, what most people see would be, there's no normal, but what we kind of perceive to be normal. So anybody that's in that group, there's a lot that goes on between medication and now we know, to circle back to nutrition, getting good sleep, exercise, all of those things are really important tools to recover. And my story is a little unique. I did write a memoir about it. So the medication protocol that I use is an endocrine-specific. So I actually utilize tamoxifen citrate originally, or Arimidex or an anastrozole, which is a selective. Well, to not get too technical, it's an anti-estrogen. So I actually targeted this. This was done based on research, and I was able to, come off of a lot of the medications I was on for bipolar. So a lot of the mood stabilizers, and those were very hard on my body. So the lithium kind of blew my thyroid. I still have to take thyroid medication, but long story to really summarize things very fast. I'm now at the point where I'm only on medication right now for the OCD and generalized anxiety. And even that I am slowly trying to come off of, utilizing some natural tools that are now accessible. And that's kind of a story for a different day. But one thing I've been very pleased with is that throughout my recovery process, I've been able to help others find their way. I really struggled because when I was going through being diagnosed and dealing with, I guess, the struggles that go with bipolar, the downs and the ups, there really wasn't anyone that could help me, because the people that were really extreme with bipolar that could communicate with me and understood were not medical practitioners. And the medical practitioners, and there are exceptions to this rule. There are some really amazing, and this is not a knock on any MD at all, but most of them, to just get through the college system and all of the hoops that you have to get through, typically they don't have extreme neurodiverse conditions. And so it was there was no guidance for me. And so I actually started the the whole journey to my cure, and I write about it in the memoir, was I've always been a health nut, and working out and lifting was a huge passion. And so I started doing research on some very dangerous substances that people need to be very cautious with, which are anabolic steroids. And that's something that I utilized when I was, without supervision. So please, if you're out there and you're listening to this, they are extremely dangerous if you're not utilizing them with a medical professional. So I'll just leave it at that. But what happened was we started finding all of these, questions. I mean, we don't really know how our mental health, the medications, we know the method of action, how the medication goes into the body, where it goes, what neurotransmitters, how they interact. But there's not anyone that knows why taking an anti-seizure medication might help with stabilizing a mood. We don't understand. We don't know why lithium helps for bipolar. So even though we understand all of the chemical reactions in the body, we don't grasp, and we can't, at least not yet. For me, my approach really is more around balance. And, there are some conditions, and bipolar is one of them, that has to be taken very seriously. So I'm not saying by any means that people can do this without medication, but you can certainly improve your probability of thriving with a condition if you increase some of the most vital aspects of your life, which would be sleep, getting to bed at the golden hour, and, of course, proper food and nutrition. And that is so important. One of the things that, has helped me dramatically, and they've studied inflammation being a huge issue with mental health as well. So when you look at the literature for nutrition, everything points towards a anti-inflammatory diet as being really vital. And I think that's a tool that's really important, especially if, when I was on a lot of medications, some of those had side effects of weight gain. And a lot of that was, I'm sure they were causing inflation too, or inflammation. So had I known a little bit more about this, and now that we've learned so much about nutrition, that would have been a helpful tool to start utilizing earlier. And I know for me personally, that's one of the first things that I go to when somebody comes for some help is, what are you doing for your food, your intake? Are you getting outside? A lot of the people don't get enough vitamin D. There's all sorts of just natural and very important topics people need to address before really hammering home with, heavy medications. And that's speaking from my own personal experience. Again, if it's something severe, you need your doctor will help you with that. But you want to find a doctor that is focused on trying to keep everything to a minimum in terms of side effects. So they're looking for every way to help you. And if they aren't talking about nutrition right now, I feel like they're behind the curve a little bit, to be honest. I mean, what would be your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just like, I love and embrace what you're saying. And as a matter of fact, I was just asking a friend, I'm like, is there a good DO in the area? Because when I start talking about alternative methods or ways to just live more functionally, my doctor looks at me like I have three heads. When I talk about like the xenoestrogens, which are endocrine disruptors. So you see little girls that are getting their periods at 8 and 9 years
Early.
old,
Yes.
really early. And there are lotions that we're putting on topically to our skin that is disrupting the microbiota, which is in your gut. I mean, there's so many, it's multifactorial. So for someone that wants to, look and do a little research, say if they see their children going through phases or things like not focused, what are the more natural ways that they can approach this? I guess like what they're eating and what are some of the first steps that to educate some of these families as to what to do and what direction to go in?
I think a lot of it comes down to being patient. Um, you know, Definitely from a nutritional standpoint, um, and actually from a physical standpoint, the exercise is essential from multiple levels. One of them is for me, if I lift weights, it's almost like a meditative type state. So it reduces my anxiety right from the get-go, and it starts my day off better. If I miss working out, I don't feel as well. And I really, I don't like to use absolutes because they're never true, but like never, right? So, but one of them that's fairly close is I feel almost every single person would benefit from physical exercise. So if you're not physically getting out there, and it does not have to be intense, it can be a nice walk around your neighborhood. It doesn't have to start out extreme. That is really important. And then you look at the diet, and to me, I have one of my issues that I had was IBS. And they thought I had Crohn's disease. That was a possibility. And, uh, you know, I struggled quite a bit with my gut. So I started slowly shifting over towards a healthier diet pretty early on, like in, I would say, my mid 20s. I struggled with weight. So I had huge weight fluctuations. A lot of that was because of medication. And that would be again why I would point towards, really understanding your nutrition. And um, one of the things that you don't want to do, I know for me as an individual that was very neurodiverse, if you have a child who is very, I would kind of get attached to something and really go with it. And that's something you want to kind of make sure you build up their self-esteem and their value without thinking of their body, because some of the diets that I see and some of the nutrition fads that people get into are kind of scary. Not kind of, they are very scary. So I never took the test. I did the schooling for the certified nutritionist and then the PMP, um, because I love that stuff. And one of the first things you notice is how many people really don't even understand something like milk. 2% milk is not 2%. And I you see it as 2% and you think, oh, it's only 2% fat, it's low fat. And you look at the back and you just do the division, and it's 50% or something along those lines. So not being able to have dairy, I did grow into a lactose intolerance, and that actually was it's kind of a blessing in disguise, because if you can't have dairy, it like cuts out all of these really inflammatory foods, like things that are rich in butter, donuts, all the sweets, sugar. Most of the desserts have some type of milk in them. So that's one thing that you want to evaluate, is see what you're eating. If you're eating a ton of sugar, it's not going to end well, because our body's just not built to do that. I think the standard for nutritionists was like around 19 grams per day of sugar, and one can of pop has like 29 grams or something. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a lot. So when you look at what what nutritionists believe from evidence-based approaches in science, and then you look at our diet, it's really problematic. And I do want to address this because it really comes in hard for mental health, which is a lot of the individuals that are struggling with mental health. It's expensive. The medications are expensive. The doctor's visits, the tests, getting locked up is really expensive if you're really out of control. And so what happens is the financial strain put on these people forces them into a place where a lot of times, there's this store called Five and Below in Colorado, and everything's $5 and below. I walked into that store and every single food item was candy or pop. There wasn't a single thing you could buy that was nutritious. And that's what our products, what are pushed. So, you see it in advertisements, and we are getting better at recognizing it, but we're still a long way from making it, one, affordable and approachable, and making this part of a educational system requirement. I mean, nutrition should be actually taught early on, not from a fear perspective, not from a calorie perspective, but these foods are, better for our heart. These foods are a little bit, more, they damage our joints, they're going to cause inflammation. If everybody kind of understood at an earlier age and we didn't get in and twist food into an emotional, problem that we all are aware of, especially with looks, I think it would be much healthier. I don't know if that's going to happen because it's hard to move things in the school system, but I think those two factors to me are extremely important. So exercise and then nutrition. Then the follow-up is sleep. Sleep is a really big one, because especially individuals on the spectrum, insomnia is one of the top. If they can't sleep, it's actually often a symptom. So, the more information you can bring to your doctor, do that. I would really suggest, if your doctor doesn't talk a lot, and they don't always have time to, there's a lot of time restrictions on doctors. So if they don't discuss a lot about nutrition and some of these other things, you can follow up with a certified nutritionist. Find one, and a good one is going to have a cost for a certain amount of sessions. They'll get your diet all written down. They'll tell you what you're doing correctly, what you're not, and if you follow what they tell you to do, and they're a certified nutritionist, you're going to get good results. It's all about compliance, and that's one of the trickiest aspects for mental health and just people taking their medication. And honestly, people struggle with that, just trying to, stay away from sugar during the holidays. It's not easy, right? So,
Yeah.
those are, and we're coming into the holidays too,
Yeah.
which makes eating healthy way more difficult. So I didn't even mention staying away from alcohol. That is something I highly advocate. And as somebody who used to drink more for self-medication, it's not the way to go. There's always a rebound, empty calories. It's just not good for your body. So if you can avoid that at all costs, a glass of wine for a celebration, is something that's, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but definitely keeping that to a minimum is very good. So those would be my main suggestions if I started off, for any parent that saw their children having some issues. I would start in those particular areas first, and then work with the doctor to kind of see where things are going. If they can't get into a doctor or a psychiatrist, there are individuals out there like me that are educational consultants, um, who often can help. At least, they have to stay in their scope. They can't practice medicine, but a lot of the advice they can give are things that honestly the therapist is going to tell you anyway, before they get into the therapy type stuff. So there are definitely things that you can find help. It's getting a little easier. We still have a long way to go because right now people, needing healthcare, definitely mental health care, have to wait. And that's actually really hard, especially when it's necessary and it needs to be done right away. So
Oh gosh, there's so many questions, so many things that I'm thinking, there's so many spokes to our wheelhouse, right? And getting to that, like people that are in our realm, getting to the root cause instead of
yes,
masking things. And what I see myself like I assess, I don't diagnose, but I try to get individuals before they hit that acute stage, like you were saying, before you're
absolutely.
all this money for doctor bills, medical bills, and giving somebody medication if needed, yes, but maybe it's what they're eating. It could be stressors at home and
Absolutely.
adults that I'm working with too. Things manifest. So, as a child, maybe it was very tumultuous, or they had somebody I was just working with. He was like, "Wow, I never thought that I've been always having these gut issues." And 5 years ago, I was away on vacation and I thought I had a stomach bug, but I had food poisoning. And I said,
Oh,
that is so paramount because people don't put the connection or oxidative stress, adrenal fatigue
no,
with work, what's going on. And that is all interplaying with this orchestra that is our body. So if the string section is off, we're going to be kind of off balance. So there's so many different layers. And that's what's so beautiful, I think, with what's going on today compared to 20 years ago. There are people like us, practitioners, that we could be in the middle, like just calming the muddy waters and really
exactly.
get to it. So I just love what you're saying. But what about, I think like my two older sons. So I'm trying to tell them, don't just go to like a Walmart or something and get this like muscle building powder because your kidneys can go on overdrive. You don't really know where
Yes.
it's being sourced. And so how do you educate people that are listening that might be doing that, going out and trying to build mass? What are
You
your
know, that is, um, it is almost programmed just like women, I think oftentimes are programmed to think that a particular body type is what they need to have, and then products are, targeted towards them. The same thing happens for men and muscle building and I was absolutely fell victim to that myself when I was in my teens. So I was taking a whole host of supplements, and you know, people don't think about the stressors to their body. Creatine is something that we actually test our kidneys for to see if they're functioning properly. So, when you're taking a whole bunch of extra creatine and expecting, yes, it may offer some slight benefit, but again, it's always weighing the benefit versus the cost. And in nutrition, the truth is there really isn't, there aren't many shortcuts. And and actually there aren't any, because even some of the things we talk about, like sports enhancing anabolic steroid, um, my hypothesis is that if you gave that to every single person on the planet, we'd still have the same percentage of people that are overweight and right, and then the same amount of people that are athletic. Is not going to change the drive of the individual. So there's really not a shortcut. There's things that people think are shortcuts, but they always have a cost. So especially with, I do want to address with the anabolics, it's what
Mhm.
brought me to my discovery was in the 1998 Steroid Act. The main reason that all happened was a father's son was using anabolic steroids and committed suicide. Now, what they didn't mention, and they didn't know, this is not a lot of science. There hasn't been a lot of studies on this, but he discontinued the testosterone replacement. So, what happens when you stop something, any kind of medication, right? There are repercussions. So, when you violently stop the testosterone, estrogen levels spike. And people that were abusing steroids do have a propensity to, honestly, depression and suicide. And that's the cost of coming off of these. So if somebody is in that state where they're using these, please go speak to a doctor, be honest with them, be upfront, talk to them about a post-cycle treatment. So that's ways to get your normal body back into a working order. So, there's all of these things out there that, we don't understand. And I think anytime you stigmatize a medication, that's why I'm being so cautious when I'm talking about this, because there are medical benefits to these if they're used properly. Humans are not great at, following the rules when they see an advantage. So a lot of times things are classified in different schedules. And it needs to be, you need to get a prescription. So, anybody out there trying to get an edge, don't experiment. Please, there's so many wonderful nutritionists, certified personal trainers. That was, another thing that I love doing. So you can find people that will help you get where you want to go and do it the right way instead of, it almost cost me my life. I was very upfront about that because it increased my hemoglobin and hematocrit levels so high. It was stressing my heart. So there's a lot of things that these supplements, to get back to your original question on the supplements and things that um, when you talk about a protein powder, make sure that the ingredients are clean. I like the Orgain protein powder, but not the one with erythritol. There's one that just has stevia and monk fruit. So look for some natural sources and I would honestly say plant-based is a great way to go, just because it's just less stress on your body in a lot of ways. So the protein powders, all the supplements that they promise are going to make you grow or get bigger, it's we all have limitations, and it's going to take time and patience and expertise. That's why you want to go talk to an expert so you don't make the same mistakes that I did going through the whole process and tearing muscles and breaking yourself down. So, you know, um, I'm a big I love doing things on my own, but that has cost me so many times. So I always advise others to seek expert advice before they delve on to any path, especially when you're a young teenager boy and or even in your young 20s. My goodness, the risks I was willing to take without thinking about the repercussions were so extreme. So don't do that. Really think long term and think about what it's going to do to you in 15 years instead of one. That's a bigger question. I think if most people look at it in a decade time frame, all of a sudden everything kind of comes into perspective and people will make better choices. That would be I just don't like it. As few possible supplements as possible. I mean, there are some that I utilize for specific reasons. Those also have side effects. So if you are taking supplements, you do want to make sure you inform your doctor or surgeon, because some of them can cause blood thinning. There's other, side effects that can come with those. Another good reason to find a certified nutritionist, and again, get help. So
Yeah. Wow. And then some of the things that I just know, just being a mom and when they were little, or maybe friends struggling with children that are on the spectrum, or I always heard the same thing was, oh my gosh, we just can't find that the secret sauce to finding medications that are really going to work for that child. Um, and them being aware of the fact that really just eating healthy and getting that sleep and rest, because when we offset our circadian rhythm, it just wreaks havoc on our body. I mean, we're human. We were meant to, just sleep, get some balance in our lives, getting out there, exercise. But
absolutely.
how can what would the first thing advice you would give to a parent who's like, I don't know what to do? You
You
know,
know,
so
nutrition is actually really tricky. So for hypersensitive individuals or neurodiverse population, especially those on the spectrum, diet is a really huge issue, not mostly because of one, convenience, and the other part is texture. So if you think of biting into certain foods, and there's entire industries designed to go research this and find what works. A lot of the textures from foods that are high in sugar are just phenomenal. The textures from a salad are they they're very different. So if you have a child that's like constantly picking something, you know, one, provide healthier options. Make sure that in your, pantry, if you're going to have really easy to open items, have things like some pistachios where somebody has to like open a shell. Each time you have to do that, it will actually slow down the process so you're eating healthier, but you also give your brain time to register that you've had some food. So, healthy snacks, beef jerky, things like that, where you can kind of keep them around so that if they have to grab it quickly, they can. And then beef jerky, same thing. It's a consistent texture. So definitely, if you have a child on the spectrum, you want to look at food in a totally different way. If so, speaking from experience with my niece, she's very particular with food, and it was very easy for me to tell what was wrong. So she doesn't like thigh meat at all because thigh meat is unpredictable in terms of its texture. There's some spots that have maybe a little bit more gristle or fat, so she doesn't like that. Chicken breast she's fine with, but she doesn't like dry chicken breast. So you have to find this balance to help, because good nutrition, that we have air fryers, so you can make really healthy chicken nuggets with your chicken breast, and they actually taste great. So there are options now, but do think in terms of texture. So if there's inconsistent, like say lettuce, and then something like soft compared to like a crunch, they might not like it. So if you look for more consistent textures, the children will like it a little bit better. And they'll finding healthy snacks is just so difficult to do. Even like the soup, all fruit, rolls and stuff are mostly sugar.
Mhm.
So it's a difficult battle, honestly, for especially individuals. And if we talk about like ADHD, I would just sit there in front of a pantry and I just keep opening a pantry. Or if I was watching something, this is actually a good tip.
Yeah.
If you do have, if you're watching, if you tend to like eat a whole bag of chips, pour it into a small bowl. It's so helpful because what happens is you pour it in, and then like I just kind of keep going until it's gone. And then when I hit the bottom of the bowl, I'm like, it just clicks in my head. And I'm like, oh, I'm done. So that is a huge thing for people with ADHD, myself included. My dad also struggles with this. He and I will just keep going. So it's that action. We just like a fidget spinner. It's the same thing. By continually eating, it's a physical stimulation. So you want to kind of be aware of that. But those are some tips for just specific instances. In terms of just generally what you want to do, I think that's most important is build up the self-esteem. If they know they matter, if they feel really good about themselves, they're going to choose bad foods every once in a while. They're going to eat their donuts or whatever else. And I think a lot of times we care so much about our children, we sometimes over direct on, food and nutrition. So if you just make sure you focus more on their self-worth, I think that actually protects long term, and they'll make the right choices. You just always want to be positive and enforce and reinforce, I should say, good choices. So when they do that, if you do that, I think they'll make the right decisions on their own, to be honest. So
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so many great tips. And I mean, we could go on and on. And how can people get in touch with you, or if they have any questions, or some of the books you have written, if they want to read up on that? Maybe you could just share a little bit. Uh,
absolutely. Definitely my book is Chaos to Cured, and it can be Chaos in the TO Cured. That's the older book through iUniverse or something like that. The newer one is Chaos, and then there's a two. cured. And that one I added just an epilogue because it was about a decade later, and a lot of people had wanted to know, like, was I still okay? Like, what had happened? And I'm the first medically documented case of full remission from bipolar. I still take the medication because I'm too scared for anything to come back. We don't know if it's a cure or whatever, but it's gone. And it's scary enough. Again, I won't ever stop. Um, so, people that do want to reach out to me or read about that, especially for bipolar, it's a very good example of what people see from that perspective. You can certainly reach out to me. I'm easy to find. I use that chaos 2 cured the number 2 um, at all the social media sites. And you can certainly reach out to me there. And I'll provide, I think actually on my podcast, there's a chaos 2 cured podcast that you can listen to that I do with Jeffrey Free. He's a wonderful man. And on our show notes, it actually has how to reach out to both of us, just like with direct numbers and everything. So that's if somebody wants to, they can also reach out to you as well. So as far as things go, I'm not always great about getting in my DMs, but I try very hard. So.
Oh, yeah, thank you. And just quick question. Anything on the back burner that you're working on that you could share with us?
Definitely there's I'm doing some case studies, and I think there's going to be some revolutionary things that happen for anxiety, and that's coming up fast. And I have something pretty neat that might help. We'll need to do case studies on that. I am the first one for an autoimmune disorder that I have, which is linear IgA. So we need to do pilot studies with a different type of medication, and the hope is it might help all connective tissue disorders. So that'd
Yeah.
be the rheumatoid arthritis, all of them, lupus, like skin lupus is something we're even looking at, but that's the hope. So working on some cool things with some wonderful people, and in the meantime, just trying to stay afloat too at the same time. De-stress. I need to be a little better about self-care. That's a good tip for everybody too. Self-care is very important. So make sure you
Absolutely.
take some time for yourself. It has been a delight. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you, Kirk. It really has. And I definitely want to have you back because we have so much great shares and interests. And if we can help people that are listening today, and if you have any questions out there, please just DM us. Let us know what you want Kirk to speak into for another episode. So again, thank you, Kirk. Thank you,
Oh, thank you.
everybody, for listening. And just remember, get out there, ground with Mother Earth, and keep it dirty. Take care.